the prophet, describing our world. I think many of us would agree the fact that we are in a situation very similar back then as when Isaiah was writing and basically speaking to Israel at that time, the divided kingdom during his lifetime. And he was taking people through this understanding and attempting to reveal to them why God was so disappointed and dissatisfied with their nation, and why, quite frankly, judgment was moving in on them. And history has shown us that in Israel's case, the northern 10 tribes did go down at the hands of the Assyrians, and about 100 plus years later, the Babylonians took the southern nation or portion of Israel out, Judah, by Babylon. But over in verse here in 16 it is, Isaiah 59, we get an introduction, an interesting introduction of a solution to humanity, or at least in this case, Israel's situation, but also by extension, humanity's case. And here is Isaiah's introduction to us as to what God intends and intended to do in terms of bringing humankind a solution to all of this sin, all of this iniquity, all of these wayward ways. He says in verse 16, the prophet does, and he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness, it sustained him. And we are being introduced here to a Redeemer. As we go down further here into these scriptures, we see that the armor of God is put upon this individual, this one who's being introduced to us as an intercessor. And in verse 18, we read, according to their deeds, accordingly, he will repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense. This intercessor, with the armor of God wrapped tightly around him, is going to ultimately bring peace to humanity. And that's what Isaiah here, this prophet, is telling us. In verse 19, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, and the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob, says the Lord. In other words, this Redeemer, this intercessor, is ultimately going to come to earth and begin to bring in a whole new era, a whole new event, a whole new set of circumstances and conditions that is ultimately going to result in peace for mankind. And this, my friends, and let me introduce this to you. I don't know how many of you realize this. This was a plan, according to your Bible. This was a plan that was in play before the world was.